Well, thanks, and thanks for having me. I think I'm like a lot of folks, and even as a member of the General Assembly, my emotions range from embarrassed to frustrated to angry about the condition of the state. I don't think we need to be in the condition we're in. I sometimes think in these campaigns we forget about the fact that we have a really good state. We have great farmland, great manufacturing, great cities, great medical research facilities, great universities, and I think sometimes folks go too far, and I think it can hurt us in talking about how bad it is. Now, it is, the numbers are not good. We all know that, whether it's credit rating, whether it's pensions, whether it's debt, et cetera. And I happen to feel like the state can be saved. I think we need to do whatever we can to fix it. I don't think that it's a journey that's like this. I think it's going to take us some time to go to the place where we need to get. And I want to be part of that. And I think the Treasurer's Office can and should be part of that. There are traditional roles for the Treasurer, investing the money, Bright Start, iCash, Link Deposit, Ag Invest, et cetera. And I think as Treasurer, you need and should do all of those effectively and efficiently and to the best of your ability. But because we are in such a bad state financially, I think you can use this office in some different ways. And we talked about them the first time I was here, but for those that weren't, I think one example that I feel passionate about is the Constitution requires a balanced budget. It doesn't say give it the old college try, General Assembly, hope you get close. It says don't spend more than you have. And the General Assembly has not followed that for the last few years. This year was a classic example. We started out with a bipartisan effort to come to an agreement on available revenue in the $34 billion figure. Toward the end of session, it was no longer bipartisan. The Democrats took that number even higher to about 35.3 with some manipulation of numbers and some borrowing and some putting off bills. And then they ended up even spending more than the number they had agreed to. They had said, we think we have 35.3, and they spent 35.7. You can't exist as a state when you keep doing that year in and year out. And so we have $5 to $6 billion of bills. It depends on the day, depends on how much the comptroller has, depends on how much the administration sends to the comptroller. You got to pay those down. I don't think in terms of all of those unpaid bills that they need to be paid immediately. I think most of us would say, give us a path. It may be 5 years, it may be 3, it may be 10, but you got to start paying down your bills. But you also have to start living within your means. And my job as treasurer, not to be presumptuous if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, is not to decide how much money there is. That's the General Assembly's decision. You can raise taxes, you can lower taxes, you can cut, you can do whatever you want, but whatever that number is, if it's 35, if it's 36, if it's 34, you have to live within that number. And I would envision, if elected treasurer, to sit with the General Assembly as kind of a second set of eyes, a third set of eyes. You've got COGFA, you've got Bureau of the Budget, et cetera, and say, wait a minute, this is all you have, or maybe your numbers are a little aggressive, maybe your estimates are a little aggressive, you're going to be doing some things I don't think you should be doing. But our goal here, General Assembly, and we want to be a partner with you, is to keep you in the budget number. And at the end of the day, and I'm sorry, this is I'm getting to my point. At the end of the day, if the General Assembly doesn't balance the budget, they need to be held accountable. They need to follow the Constitution. They need to follow the law. And if that means, as the person who has a fiduciary duty to watch the money has to go to court to enforce the Constitution, I'm going to do that. It is a linchpin to our recovery. We've got other things we have to do. We have to improve the economy, et cetera, but improve the business climate. But you got to start living within your means. And my opponent and I have a disagreement on this. He's been somewhat dismissive of it. Not somewhat. He's been dismissive of this idea. But look. We spent $300 million last year in late fees and penalties. If you are a nursing home, a doctor, a hospital, you sell vegetables to a prison, you provide printing services to the state. We're not paying you on time, and we have to pay you late fees and penalties. That's $300 million we just tossed out the window. Imagine what $300 million would do in Sangamon County or Springfield or in Marion, Illinois. The other thing that goes on is if you're a small vendor, you're lucky if you can stay in business when we don't pay you. You can be a substance abuse provider in Decatur or Springfield, and if we're not paying you, it's tough nowadays to get a line of credit or for a bank to say, how can we help you? So, long explanation on point one, but you got to live within the Constitution. You got to pay your bills. 2, I think the General Assembly can do a better job, and I think this is where the Treasurer's Office can come into play. The comptroller does and obviously I'm a big fan of the comptroller, she lays out bills that are paid or that are owed, et cetera. But I think we can do more in the Treasurer's Office of giving folks an understanding of the true financial condition of the state. We want to provide, we've got a report card, and we can leave you a copy. We'll get you a copy. And you may have already seen it. We did a press release on it. And that lays out the true financial condition of the state. We want to do it on a quarterly basis. A company will do it annually. We want to do it quarterly. What's our pension unfunded liability? What's our unemployment rate? How many bills do we have? What's our bond indebtedness? Do we have a capital indebtedness, et cetera? And just lay all of that out, and kind of transparency on steroids. And because I think that the more people know, the better. And if you have that data, you can use it however you want in your paper, radios, TVs, et cetera. We'll put it online. And there aren't any easy decisions left for the state of Illinois. And I think you have to finish things and fix things, you have to have an honest conversation about what's the true picture. Third, I want to create an integrity unit in the Treasurer's Office. And I want to grow the Treasurer's Office. I want to use the existing staff. I envision maybe 4 or 5 people working on this, but taking on fraud and corruption. SEC charged us with securities fraud a couple years ago, and to be very, very clear, it wasn't this administration, it was Blagojevich. When that administration was going to the bond houses and credit agencies, they were lying about the financial condition of the state. They said our assets were more than they were. They said our liabilities, especially in pensions, were not as extreme as they were. And they charged us. They said, you are charged with a crime. And it was, no one went to jail, but you have committed fraud in the eyes of the SEC. Extreme examples of pension abuse, where you can work for the city of Chicago and then go work for a labor organization, and at the end of your retirement you were getting 2 pensions. You can't do that. We fixed that. We had a situation with folks that were substitute teaching for a day. So we want to be proactive. And when we read about fraud and abuse in your paper or anybody else's, or hear about it from the SEC or the U.S. Attorney's Office, it's often too late. And I think we can be proactive in the Treasurer's Office. So those are the 3 things that we've talked about that are a little bit outside the box of the office. I don't think it certainly doesn't mean you neglect the statutory duties. And so that's what we want to do. I think the other thing you have to do in this role is I think you have to be an integral part of the legislative process. And that means being in Springfield. Maybe not every single day of the year, but you have to be part of that. If that, at a minimum, you're here during the legislative session. I, as the leader, I was here a lot, and I envision and want to be part of the legislative process. That means being here on a regular basis. This is a state capital. I have good relationships with folks in this town, and both political and otherwise. And as an aside, I was very lucky. I got the support and endorsement of the organization, the Republican organization, the primary. That was important to me. I did very well in this county in the primary. I think we got almost, if not 70%. 74. Okay, I was wrong. 74. That's even better. I'm glad I erred on the low side, but that's important to me. And I want to be, in essence, if you're a constitutional officer, you need to be part of this community, and that involves not just the legislature, but being part of Springfield and being here. So that's it. It was a long answer, but I wanted to cover it all, if that's okay.
That's absolutely fine. Your race is one of the more active ones in terms of ads and things. What is your opponent saying about you that is not true? Is there anything that needs to be clarified or truth to be told about? What is happening?
Look, I think there's a great contrast in this race. We've laid out an agenda. You may not like it. You may not, you may not like the idea of a balanced budget. You may not like the idea of transparency. You may not like the idea of taking on fraud and corruption. But we've laid out the things that we want to do and that our vision for what this office can do. If we were a state with $5 billion in a rainy day fund, you might not be thinking this way. But we are in unprecedented times. And he's been dismissive of the balanced budget push. He says that, we already show data. Well, we don't. We're somewhat limited in what we provide, and you'll see our report card when I give it to you. And he doesn't even respond to the fraud and corruption. So I like where we are in our position. He's gotten kind of negative and he's gotten extreme on social issues, which is a little ironic. I'm a pretty socially moderate guy, and I'm pro-choice. I have been in my whole time in the General Assembly. I voted for marriage equality. I have supported what I would call common sense things on the immigration issue, with whether it was the driver's license bill, in-state tuition, the DREAM Act. So it's pretty hard to go down that road, but he's tried. And there have been some issues about him, and I didn't create those issues. So, when he announced, he told everybody in his announcement that he was going to, that you should support him because he was, basically responsible for doing away with free health care for retirees, retired state legislators. Turns out he had voted no on the bill. If you're going to tout these things, you have to be accurate. He's will tell you when he comes in to see you, or if he has, that he's qualified because he has a certificate from he took a test to be a certified something. I'm not even sure what he. Okay, I think the record's pretty clear on his time in the auditor's office. He was the head of appointed by the county board as the IMRF representative, the Illinois Municipal Retirement Advisor to the county board. They went through this whole process of whether or not they should do early retirement. Offer an early retirement option. There was a change of the board, went from Republicans to Democrats. Democrats had control of the county board for years. They wanted to do an early retirement plan. He went to the county board and said, I've analyzed the numbers. I think it makes sense. They did it. He said, I think it's going to save the county $120 million. Turns out they had to go sell bonds to pay for it. It cost them almost $3 million. And then they removed him from IMRF. So, these, I think, if you're going to tout yourself as an expert, then I think you have to ask, it's fair to ask these questions. Clearly, we have a difference on taxes. So, I'm not going to apologize for where we are on those 3 or 4 issues we're talking about. And as I said, he's been dismissive of them. He supported these unbalanced budgets. I haven't. And that's, I guess that's, I'm not sure what else I can say. I'd be glad to, if there's more, if you want me to elaborate more, if I didn't answer the question, I'll certainly try.
I heard him on the radio this morning say that you voted for the George Ryan budgets that also helped get the state where it is. They had all the pension deferrals and all kinds of other things. And how many years are in the legislature?
20.
Yeah.
No, look, I think actually back in Jim Edgar days and George Ryan days, we had, I would argue, balanced budget. I think George Ryan, actually, his last budget, he made some significant cuts. And it was not easy. I can remember I think one of his last years that he did. He did. The last time there was and as you all know, in '95, Edgar proposed a 50-year payment cycle, and for 10 straight years, we made those payments. It wasn't until Blagojevich that in 2005, I think it was $2.3 billion of lack of making pension payments.
So that was because the Edgar thing ramped it up after a couple of terms, and then Blagojevich caught that, right?
No. Yeah, Edgar got us on a 50-year payment cycle, which is the right thing to do. Payments were smaller when he was.
They got bigger.
I know, agreed. But in 2005, the pension payment just wasn't made, and it was to the tune of about $2 billion, and it was the worst time you could have not made a pension payment, because. And look, I'll go back. Republicans and Democrats were at fault over the years of not making payments. Edgar does put us on a payment plan, and I think it was very smart. 2005, Blagojevich et al., no Republican supported, didn't make payments, and the problem with that was the economy was so bad, so the systems, in order to make payments to annuitants, had to sell assets that were depressed. So you're selling real estate, you're selling stocks and bonds, and it exacerbated an already significant problem. That wasn't going on. I'm not aware, Bernie, of not making a payment during the Ryan years. 10 years we went where we were making payments. It wasn't until 2005. And if you'll recall, the unfunded liability in 2005 was in the $35 to $40 billion range. Now it's at 100. So that was the real the crime in not paying it was in the 2005-2006 years.
Did you vote for the current thing that's before the Supreme Court, the pension?
Mm-mm.
You did not.
You said when you were here in the spring, you would hope the Supreme Court would give some guidance for the General Assembly. They've had a couple rulings now on, not the same case, but related issues. Do you think they've given enough guidance now?
No. I'm hopeful that when they rule on the bill that got to them, that they will say you can do this, you can do this, or they may just say we affirm it, we reverse it, or and what I said is, and what I meant, and I still believe this, I haven't changed, is that they will say here's some areas that we might find acceptable, given we have a huge problem in this state. They may not. I don't think any lawyer or non-lawyer cannot sit here and tell you what they're going to do to try to get in their heads, and it's not a criticism of anybody, but no one knows what they're going to do. I simply said I would be nice if they gave us some direction. They may not, but it would help us all.
We've been over this territory, certainly in your previous visit, but is it not the Attorney General's role to sue the state or to go to court instead of the Treasurer's office, and doesn't that mean you'll have to have more lawyers, and perhaps you don't have those people on staff yet, so it might be more expensive. But anyway.
No, look, whatever we do, we do it within staff, and we'd work with the Attorney General. I'm not trying to, I think she's very competent, and we would work with her.
Does that mean you're assuming she's going to win this race? Just kidding.
No, he's not.
We've done a lot of research on this. We've worked with a law firm, or a law school. We're working with a law school and some other interest groups, that the treasurer, who has this fiduciary role to watch our money. I mean, you are investing $12 to $15 billion of money a day, and you in that role, it falls on you. Is the research I've done to, protect the money, and so you have what from a legal standpoint is standing to take this on. And look, I guess the Attorney General, depending on her approach, that she might have that authority too. But we clearly feel we would have the same amount of authority. It's kind of a unique spot with the treasurer, but you can't say you've got the fiduciary duty to watch the money and then just only give you half the authority to do it. And so we carry it to this level.
Okay, well, given, again, I shouldn't have listened to the radio this morning, but I've heard discussion of the Rauner budget plan. Rauner budget plan is cut income tax back to 3 over time, give more money to schools. I know roads come out of something else, but give more money to roads. He's going to beef up DNR. So it sounds like, do you have any concerns as a legislator about what the leader of your party is saying that he would do with that budget? Are you going to sue him?
Well, were Rauner and Ferricks together? Were there a breakfast, a party, or are they on separately?
No, it was Ferricks.
No.
But I mean, but lots of independent observers, if you want to call them, have said the Rauner budget doesn't add up.
Well, let me be. I haven't read his proposal, but I will be real clear about this. Whether it's a Republican governor or a Democrat governor, regardless of the party, we've got to balance the budget. And if Bruce Rauner's the governor and he doesn't propose a balanced budget, then we're going to insist on it being balanced. It doesn't matter to me who the governor is in terms of that. I'm not looking for a lawsuit, okay? That's not the goal here. The goal here is to have a balanced budget. The goal here is to, in an ideal world, work together in a bipartisan way and say, this is the amount of money we have, and it might be tough one year. It might, the economy might get better. We might have a little more money, but whatever it is, we can't go over that number. And that's the ultimate goal here. It's not whether there's a lawsuit or not. It's whether we have a balanced budget.
Are you saying you have no opinion on the Rauner budget? Have you not even looked at it as a candidate of the party to see if his numbers add up or not? Because he's running on that, and you're on the ticket.
I haven't added up his numbers.
Just this whole suing thing, part of the issue was that you had kind of indicated you wanted to be Attorney General for a while, and then you chose this because Lisa Madigan stayed there. Is that a fair thing to say?
Look, I've been a budget money pension guy in all my time at the General Assembly. I want to fix the state. This state is great about political chatter and political gossip. Maybe other states are the same way, and we all speculate and we want to do this, we want to do that. The goal is, can you be an effective treasurer? Can you make a difference? Can you help turn the state around? You're not going to do it by yourself, but can you be a player in that? Can you be a partner in that? I talked about the pension problem 10 years ago. I talked about the evils of not making the payment in 2005. We've advocated balanced budgets. We've advocated in pushing changing the business climate in this state so we can have more jobs, lower unemployment, more revenue. So, and this is an office where you can, I think, make a huge difference.
Remind us where you are on the issue of combining the treasurer and comptroller.
Totally supportive of it. I filed back in 2003 or 4 the constitutional amendment language to do that, and have been supportive ever since. I think it not only does it save us $12 million, which I think we also lose sight of the fact people say it's only $12 million in the context of our budget, but that's still a lot of money. I also think it sends a strong message to taxpayers that there's some recognition of that you need to consolidate and combine. I also think it sends a strong message to other units of local government around the state that you can combine and still get the work done. I think we all know it didn't pass. It didn't even get called in the House, but I'll continue to advocate for that.
Is there, obviously the big job of the treasurer is invest the funds. Is there anything that you would differ with the current administration's investment strategy, different kinds of things, real estate, hedge funds, whatever's popular these days?
Look, I think from an investment standpoint, his returns, Dan has done a good job in that area. His returns have exceeded kind of the normal benchmarks. There's some things in the Bright Start area where I think we would make some changes. There's currently an investment policy committee right now that oversees just investment strategies. I'd like to do that separate, have one of those just for Bright Start as well, an investment committee, kind of an independent committee, if you will, to do quarterly audits. They don't do quarterly audits now of Bright Start, but Bright Start, as it has come back, I think there are 100,000 new participants over from 4 years ago. Assets have increased by about 50%. But I think that I think you have to be all over this to just make sure that it's really doing well. So we would create an independent committee. We do quarterly audits, and then we've got in 2017 there's the contract will expire with the current provider, and it's just Oppenheimer. So I'd want to be a real aggressive. We would be in having a very competitive bidding process and transparent on that. So those would be good. That's where we would be. I think there's been a little disagreement on us in this office between my opponent on investment strategy. I think you have to be. His approach seems to be, from what he said, to more limited to keeping your investments within Illinois. And while that sounds good, from an investment strategy, you can't limit your investments. You need a broader approach. If you have a 401, if you have deferred comp, you're not going to limit your investment to one sector. There are also limits statutorily about what you can and can't do. You can't go buy stock of Caterpillar or stock of Walgreens. You just can't do that. You're limited in your investment strategy because you're investing $12 to $15 billion a day, and it's also a cash flow issue. I can invest maybe overnight or for 7 days because Judy Topinka might be calling me and saying I need money to pay down bills. So we've got the only overseas or international investment we have is Israeli bonds. Those have been very good. Other states have actually been utilizing those. There's never been a default. They've always been good returns. I'd actually up that. I think we have about $25 million in Israel bonds. I would like to see that go up, maybe even as high as $50 million, because it's been a good, strong investment. Ohio, I think he's probably at about 50. I looked at that recently. But in any event, I just think you have to have a broad approach. You have to maximize your returns, minimize your risk, and have a kind of a global approach to investing.
Just for the record, it was WTX. Sorry, I listened. He said that you're misrepresenting when you say he wants Illinois-only investments.
No.
He says that's kind of a misrepresentation of what he's been saying. So I'm not exactly sure what he's been saying, but that's what he's saying.
I'm not sure he does either. He's kind of been saying a lot of different things, but he said.
Well, we'll probably let him speak for himself.
Well, here's what I hope. Let's do this. Let's do a radio. Let me get on a radio show the same day he's coming in, and then I can say things, so you'll be prepped.
That's a great idea.
I'm just kidding. No, look, I mean, he's been all over the board on that. He's been all over the board on. Well, okay, never mind.
So any thoughts about lottery and contractors and all of that?
It's not it has not been under the purview of the treasurer's office. I know there's some problems out there, but my guess is there'll be a review of that as we get back into the fall or perhaps after the governor's race, whoever wins.
You picked up an endorsement this week from a Democrat, Lexi Newleys. But a softball question. I was wondering, first off, is that something you sought, or how did that come about? And then also, the softball part is, what do you think that says about you as a
So we've had 3 good endorsements in the last 2 weeks. The Illinois Chamber never endorsed in the history of the state in this race for us. And they said based on our records, there were strong differences on taxes, on the budget, and our ideas. The mayor of Aurora, who is a staunch Democrat, was, I think, even an Obama delegate to the convention, and then Alexi. And so on the Democrat side, there's several things it says. One, I've been fortunate, and even as a leader, which sometimes gets highly partisan, both in the Will County part of my district and in the Aurora King County part of my district, we've been very bipartisan. Whether it's Tom Weisner as the mayor or down in Will County, the state's attorney's a Democrat, the county executive's a Democrat, A.J. Wilhelmi, Jennifer Holmes, or Linda Holmes, Jennifer Bertani-Tarrant, JPT, and Natalie Manley, we've all worked together. And we've gotten a lot of stuff done on the local level. And so the fact that the mayor of Aurora came out and said, he came to me and started talking. He said, I like that you're a moderate Republican. We've worked together. I like the bipartisanship. I want to support you. And he came to us, and I said, please, good, we'll take it. And so I think that was a good sign. And it's a good sign as indicative, or kind of as an example of how we view things and how he views things of us. Had some talk with Alexi, not a lot. I met with him several months ago, but didn't even talk about an endorsement. So he had talked to somebody else, and came out on Sunday on the radio and said, "Look, well, you probably heard it." So he's a guy that's seen The Office, and he talked a little bit about my opponent and where he was on some things, and he liked where I was on some issues. So I think it's great. I think it's a good sign. I still, and look, I've been part of this. It's not always been bipartisan. I don't think bipartisanship is a bad thing. I don't think compromise is a bad thing. And I think that the whole country has fallen out of that's fallen out of favor. And it doesn't mean you have to give up your principles. And I haven't, but I think there's still room to work together. And I think those two saying that supports that. And I couldn't be more excited about it.
Yeah, did that just come out on Pearson's show on Sunday morning? So it was just he had him on and he said it. You didn't know it was coming?
He had talked about it. I kind of had a sense that it was.
You talked to him about it?
No. But other people suggested this was coming, and I mean, I'm not going to stop it. I'm like, oh, hey, Dave, I'm going to the show. Look, I'm glad I wanted it.
You talked at the beginning about how Illinois, there are good things in the state, and people keep bashing it. Well, it is a political season, so
right.
Obviously, people are saying it's terrible. But then, from the other side, the unemployment rate keeps slowly going down, and it's gone down like 3 points in whatever it is a year, and over 10 years, it's back to where it was some years ago. Is that not a positive, or do you not believe those numbers?
Let me back up a couple. What I was trying to, my point was, I think generally speaking, overall, we have to be careful not to go in campaign season or not too far in bashing the state. Because I think that, and it is political seasons, I get that. But my only point was, if it's a constant tone of negativity about this state, and we have challenges, I'm not saying we don't, then I think you end up doing everybody a disservice. And I think you have to be careful where that line is. I'm not sure, Bernie. I think the numbers can be manipulated. And I think there's a real question about the true numbers in terms of available folks' workforce. And I think people leaving the workforce and leaving the state doesn't always get factored in in that discussion.
So you think the Quinn administration is doctoring the unemployment numbers?
I think the number of folks not included in those numbers is accurate. I think the workforce or available workers is a lot less than, or I think we've lost a lot more people in the workforce than they're letting on. You can, if you want to term it that way, you can. I think the numbers have been played around with.
And those numbers is it from the state or the feds?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, but you're accusing the Quinn administration of doctoring.
No, you just did.
No, but you said that's what you think.
I think the numbers have been manipulated. I don't think, and maybe it's not the Quinn administration. I don't know who does the numbers, Bernie. All I'm saying is I think the available people in the workforce has dropped.
you think it's a manipulation, or do you think it has to do with the way the government counts these?
I don't know the answer to that. That's a fair question. I don't know, but I do believe the people I think that number looks better than it really is, and I'm not going to accuse anybody of anything. I mean, I'm not, that doesn't do. I just don't. I think when you have fewer people available, then that number is going to look better than it is, and I don't think that always gets factored in. And I'm not going to. I don't know who creates that number, so I'm just not going to. I could say something, but I may be wrong. I'm not going to do it.
What about the number, I don't think there are any specific numbers, maybe, of this flood of people that are leaving Illinois to go to other states. Do you think those numbers are accurate?
Yeah, I think we're like second in the country on migration of people. Yeah, I think a lot of, look, it's anecdotal. I mean, I'm out every day talking to people, and when I was the leader 7 or 8 years ago, you'd be out talking to folks and business guys, gals, and it was chit chat. I'm thinking about it. Maybe, I don't know. We're talking about it. Now it's beyond that, and people are taking action, making steps to change and to leave, and it's beyond chit chat. And I believe those numbers are pretty real.
Why do you anecdotally, what is your sense of why they're leaving? Is it because they hate Illinois, or is it because there are some kind of opportunities available to them elsewhere? What is your sense of why people are leaving?
Well, I think either thinking about it or doing it, because I don't think it's hate Illinois. I think it's they're frustrated about what they see. I mean, the numbers are not good. I mean, whether it's credit rating, pensions, and they just don't believe there has been a reckoning or a recognition by the General Assembly or action to turn it around. And they look at other states that seem to have their act together. It can be Tennessee, it could be Indiana, it could be Missouri, it could be Florida. Taxes are lower, property taxes are lower, the unemployment might be lower. Maybe now these aren't necessarily, these are more maybe some are retired, some are not. And I was with a guy that has a trucking company in Will County. He said, I'm 30 miles away from Indiana. I can move over there, and all I have to do is push buttons every day and with my computer. And workers' comp's lower there. Other things are lower from a price wise. So it's that our government has not acted in the way they would say needs to be take the action that needs to be taken to fix things, or even turn it around so it looks like we're going to fix things in the next 5 or 10 years. I don't think anyone expects, regardless of who I talk to, that this can be fixed overnight. No one's saying that, but at least start the journey, and they don't feel like anyone's starting the journey. That's my characterization, but some form of that.
Do you have a position from what you're running for on what the state should do with the tax rate? Should it just go down to 3.75, or do you want the runner thing down to 3 over 4 years? Do you have an opinion on that?
No, I am focusing on my issues and have focused on it. I have not been.
You talk about balanced budget a lot.
I do, because that's one of my key points.
So how are they going to do? You don't have.
Look, Bernie. I've said all along. I think I don't believe in extending the tax. And again, that's not the role of the treasurer. But I don't believe you should extend the tax. What happens if you do that is it relieves all of the pressure to fix other things. And you say, oh, well, we've got more money, we've raised taxes. Then whether it's on Medicaid reform, whether it's on doing things like consolidating, whether it's fixing the business climate, whether it says, well, we're gonna live within our means and only spend the 34.7 versus going to 35.7. Those things, in my opinion, all go off the table, and it completely takes all the pressure off. And there's no incentive to really do things. We did a workers' compensation bill here 2 years ago, 3 years ago. When we nibbled around the edges, we didn't fix the real issue. The real issue is causation. Causation is, where did you get hurt? Did you get hurt at work? Did you get hurt at the family picnic that weekend? And everybody in the building knew that we weren't addressing causation. You go talk to the chairman of Caterpillar. I just talked to him the other night. I was at a fundraiser for David Leach. He said, my comp rates are not going down, they're going up. He said, I can put a building in Indiana that's the same size, doing the same amount of work with the same number of people, and my workers' compensation costs are 5 times cheaper. So when you can fix those things and have some significant growth in workforce, you can have significant growth in revenue just in doing those things. And I think if you're not careful, if you take the pressure off fixing those things, then you never get to them.
But we're coming up on our 45 minutes. Do we have other questions in the room? Anything else that you would like to talk about that we haven't touched on already?
Well, look, there's, you've got a clear distinction here in this race. I think we can fix things. We've laid out some ideas for him. There are differences between the two of us on taxes, on what I've done and what he wants to do. It sometimes sounds corny, but the reality is I do believe we can fix the state. I do believe it's fixable. I think we can get there. As I said during this interview, I don't think it happens overnight. I think it's a long journey. I think it could be 5 to 10 years before we're back to where we'd all like it to be. But you got to start somewhere. And as I said at the outset, I think the Treasurer's Office can be part of that, and I think it should be part of that. I think you need to use these offices in creative ways, out-of-the-box thinking, maybe some ways that you say, well, wait a minute, I've never heard anyone say that before. Are you sure? You have to start thinking that way. And if you don't, then we're going to be sitting here having these same conversations, or you're going to be sitting here having the same conversations with some other candidate in 4 years or 8 years. And that's not acceptable. And we got to try different things. And we're willing to try those different things within the confines of the rules of that building over down the street.
Any political prognostications about like the U.S. Senate race or the governor's race? You see any trends forming as you're out on the trail and seeping in all this knowledge from people?
You didn't hear any answers on the radio this morning when you were listening?
Didn't hear that one.
There's a lot of frustration and anger out there, and a lot of it's going to depend on who turns out. But obviously, people, you guys know this. You hear it every day. People aren't happy, and it'll be interesting who shows up. But I like, our polling has been good for us. The Sun Times had us up 7 points, and all our numbers have been anywhere from 7 to 10, 12. Our opponent has a little more money than us because he didn't have a primary. We did, and not complaining about it. But independents in all of the polling that we've done, everybody's done, are breaking our way in our race, and we're pleased with that. We are doing anything but letting up. We're going to work hard till the very, very end, and I like where we are, but we've got a long way to go, and we're cautiously optimistic.